I am not a negative Michigan Wolverines fan. Stop saying that. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 reasons why I'm optimistic we can win this game, and I'm going to be glass half full most of, if not the entirety of this video. But I'm not negative. I am just hesitant, and I'm a realist to jump on that all aboard train. I've got plenty of time to get onto it. I will get onto it if it ever is time to make that ride. But for now, I'm going to be hesitant. I'm going to be smart about this and not jump on like you guys, because you might end up jumping off in the long run. I know negative Michigan Wolverines fans. I know them. They are dark clouds always. Everything's gloomy. They never see the positive in anything at all. And I'm not that person. I do see positives in some things, and I'm going to go over some of those things here today. So, understand, me, not negative. Some other people, yes, negative. With that said, let's give those 5 reasons why I think Michigan could win against Ohio State. We're going to start off without one of those reasons, with one of the reasons that people think we are going to have a chance against them, but I'm not listing this on my list, because if you follow this channel, you've known for a long time that I believe that this is not going to be an advantage in this game, and that is our run game versus their rush defense. Their rush defense had a lot of issues, a lot of problems early on in the season, and our run game was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal early into the season. But let me talk about Big Ten play for Michigan, what we've done on the ground game since Big Ten play has started, and what Ohio State has done in Big Ten play since the change in their defensive coordinators. And maybe, just maybe, that will change your mind into understanding that this is not as much of an advantage, if it is even an advantage at all, in this game. Michigan against Rutgers, 38 carries, 112 yards, just 2.9 yards per carry. That's not very good against Rutgers, not even 3 yards per carry. Against Wisconsin, obviously that's going to be tough on the ground, so not going to give them too much of a problem there, but still, it's part of the statistics. 44 carries, 112 yards, 2.5 yards per carry. That's not very good. Nebraska, 42 carries, 204 yards, 4.9 yards per carry. Now that sounds a lot better, 4.9 yards per carry. But because I keep stats during the game and keep up with everything during the game because I give my reaction video thereafter, I know that we were going into the fourth quarter against Nebraska with just 3.9 yards per carry. That's better than those other 2 games against Wisconsin and Rutgers, but it's not that good. 3.9 is not phenomenal. It's not going to be good enough to where you want to absolutely use it and exploit the other team with it. What we did against Nebraska that I said was very good was we wore down that Nebraska defense, and they got tired in the fourth quarter after a valiant effort in the third quarter. But I don't know if that's going to work against Ohio State. In fact, I highly doubt it will. So now let's talk about Ohio State's rush defense. And again, I'm getting into the positive. Let's just get this one thing out of the way. I don't want to hear people talking about our run game versus their rush defense. I'm trying to caution you when you're talking with your buddies and talking with your friends and family about why Michigan can beat Ohio State or will beat Ohio State. Don't mention this. I'm telling you, it's not a good argument for us. And we'll get into the positives. I'm getting there. Rutgers, 31 carries, 111 yards, and 3.6 yards per carry against Ohio State's rush defense. That's not that great. Ohio State could do a little bit better in that regard against Rutgers, but 3.6 is still not that good, and it's very much improved if you're an Ohio State fan. Then Maryland, last time around, got 36 carries, 56 yards for just 1.6 yards per carry. So that just tells you that we can see, since Kerry Combs is out as the defensive coordinator and Matt Barnes has taken that slot, Ohio State is much, much improved. Now, you could argue that that's just makeup on a pig. At some point, that ugly face is going to show itself again if you're the Ohio State rush defense. You could argue that, and I think Michigan should absolutely test and experiment early and often in this game. I think they should test it just to see, because at any point, they know that run game. They know it like the back of their hands. So they know that they can do it, and they know how to utilize it and use it if we find out that Ohio State can't stop the run game. But I am very confident, unfortunately, that Ohio State will find a way to stop our run, because they know that that's what Jim Harbaugh is privy to do. That's what Jim Harbaugh has a habit of doing, him and his offenses, and they're not going to just sit there and let it happen. So they'll be ready for it, and I don't think it's going to be an advantage. But I do think we have 5 advantages in this game, and let's get into it. From least important to most important, my number 5 reason as to why Michigan can win this game is that Jim Harbaugh, the Jim Harbaugh that we know, most of us know and love, might be back. He might just be back. We have seen plenty of signs of it. I am starting to become more of a Harbaugh fan. I know it's ebbs and flows with me, and I think that's fair. That's how it is in most situations in life. Ebbs and flows. I'll give people chances. If they let me down, I'll go downward. If they bring me back up, I'll go ahead and go on that ride again. I'm fine with that. I forgive, I forget, I do all those sorts of things. Harbaugh this season, I've really liked his demeanor. He seems to be refreshed, and we're going to get into a why, in my opinion, why he's that way. But he seems very refreshed. Running away from the reporter the other day, I loved it. He said, I ain't got time for this nonsense. I'm done. We just had a huge win. I don't want to hear any kind of, this and that. I'm tired of talking to the media. I'm tired of dealing with you guys. You guys are not on my side. So I'm just going to run away from you and do what I do. I love that Harbaugh. Most other fan bases against Jim Harbaugh and against Michigan, they don't love that. They think it's too cocky, too confident, too this and that. They call it delirious. I'm fine with that. I know it makes you look stupid in the end if you end up losing to Ohio State like you normally do, to be so confident and over the top and then that happen. But I'd rather that. I'd much rather that than you being deflated and negative and then your team all of a sudden plays off of that negative energy and everybody's just deflated and doesn't have what they need going in. Also with Harbaugh, his relationship with Cade McNamara, it is very Wilton Speight-esque. I think he just has that comfortability with Cade McNamara. I know a lot of people are calling for JJ McCarthy, and I'm kind of one of those people, but I think there's a reason why Harbaugh is clinging to Cade McNamara. He does not turn the ball over. That's definitely going to play a factor. It's not on my list, but not turning the ball over obviously is going to be a huge reason why Michigan will have a chance against Ohio State. And he just plays the type of football that Jim Harbaugh knows and loves. And you can see him smacking the pads again the same way he did with Wilton Speight. He's just a brand new Jim Harbaugh, and I think it starts with that quarterback position that he has that comfort level with and just the players as a whole. And again, I'm going to allude to something that I think is I just now really caught on to this week when I was thinking about making this video. Now, I'm too young to have seen Harbaugh during his playing days, but I've watched videos in the past, I've watched interviews in the past, I've talked to my dad, I've talked to my friends who are old enough to see that Jim Harbaugh, and it really feels like he might be like he was at the beginning of his tenure here as a coach and how he was during his playing days in terms of his confidence level and his swagger and the way he presents himself and making promises and stuff like that and really feeling confident in those promises. This brings me back, in my opinion, if I was old enough to remember, it would bring me back to the Jim Harbaugh playing days. Not the days of COVID where everything was just, gloomy and questionable and everything else. Not the days of all the reporters asking Harbaugh when he's going to beat Michigan State and Ohio State consistently. Not any of those days, okay? It's back to Ann Arbor, back to optimism, back to positivity, and he obviously needs to beat Northwestern, Indiana, and Maryland, hopefully soundly in most of those games, if not all, but he also needs to, in the Michigan State and Penn State games, he needs to do two things. He needs to be competitive in both of those games, and he cannot do worse than 1-1 in those games. He needs to at least split that series between those two. We need to go into the Ohio State game with something to play for. Hopefully all the marbles to play for if we're lucky. So yeah, to me, Harbaugh is back. The Harbaugh that I like and I love is back, and now I'm going to be on his side. I'm going to be on his side until he again, hopefully not, proves otherwise, okay? There's not as much pressure on him, and this is what I'm alluding to. Number 4, there is not the ego on this team that there has been in the past. Cade McNamara made that statement after the Nebraska game, saying that Michigan teams in the past would have folded under the scenario that they went under, which is giving a ton of points up to Nebraska in the second half after having a 13-0 lead at the half. And he is absolutely 100% without a doubt correct when he said that Michigan teams in the past had so much ego, they'll never admit it. And I'm not going to point fingers at players. You guys probably have in your mind who some of those players are on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball. But players in the past probably were like, in those situations, they were like, why am I not getting the ball more? Why is this not happening? Why is that not happening? They felt like they were above the coaching staff and above Jim Harbaugh. And it just can't be like that. I know you can have your issues with Jim Harbaugh. I've had my issues with Jim Harbaugh. But if I was playing for him, I'm telling you what, I'm going all in because he's my leader. He is my leader, and I'm on that team. And it's my responsibility to, whether I agree with it or not, follow his lead and let him lead. You let leaders lead, and then you just do your job, okay? And you don't get upset or disappointed otherwise. Egos are for the NFL. And unfortunately, some of these guys, they thought that they were in the NFL late into their careers, to the point where they just weren't there for the team. Think about the 1969 Michigan versus Ohio State game. That is the easiest example. One of the biggest upsets in college football history. Ohio State comes into that game with a 22-game win streak under legendary coach Woody Hayes. They're number one in the nation. They're looking for their second national championship in consecutive years. Michigan, pretty decent, playing for the Rose Bowl, but again, one of the biggest upsets in history, in college football history. 24-12, Michigan won that game. And why? Why? It wasn't because of the talent. Ohio State was more talented. Hard work is very important. Having that confidence about you is very important. Having that swagger about you is very important. That 1969 team, apparently, obviously I wasn't alive, had that. And we've had teams in the past who have had that. We need that back here at Michigan, and I think quite possibly we could have that. You know, with all the great recruiting classes we've had and all the 5- and 4-star power we've had on Michigan, I would argue that egos have been a big issue as to why we ended up having a downfall in most seasons, because the egos got in the way of the overall mission and it made Jim Harbaugh no longer the leader of the team. Okay? There's only 2 coaches in my mind right now who are able to handle that kind of ego, and really only one that I'm 100% confident in. That is Nick Saban, and he is just on a list by himself. So Nick Saban's able to handle those egos. He always has been able to. He can bring in an insurmountable amount of talent, and when they start to not go Nick Saban's way and not follow his lead, he just says, forget you. I'll sit you. I'll get rid of you. I don't care what I have to do. You're not going to be bigger than this team. Okay? Great coaches are able to do that. Okay? The other guy I would mention is Dabo Swinney, but now Dabo Swinney's going to face some resiliency, maybe some back talk and some question marks here, as Clemson's not as good as they've been in the past, obviously. So we'll see if he's able to handle that adversity moving forward and those egos going forward, because there's a lot of star power on that team that's going to be upset that they're not, getting the touches and stuff like that, because they want to go to the NFL. So they want the touches. So all of a sudden, these guys start to get a little bit greedy, start to question the coach because they want to be in the spotlight, and we'll see what happens. But for now, I'll give Dabo Swinney the benefit of the doubt. I don't love Dabo Swinney's X's and O's inability, in my opinion, but as far as handling his team, he's always been pretty good at that. So those are the 2 guys. Harbaugh, that's not really his forte, okay? He doesn't like that because he's not an ego person. He's a team-first person. He played under Bo Schembechler. So this team is very Bo Schembechler era-esque in terms of the team. They're about it for the right reasons, and I would argue that right now, that might be what Michigan needs. Do I want 4- and 5-star athletes? Yes, but I want the right 4- and 5-star athletes that are going to be there and play with the right mentality and for the University of Michigan, not for themselves. Number 3. 2016 and 2018. Those are the 2 years that Harbaugh had his best teams that could possibly beat Ohio State. What did those 2 years have in common? They had in common that the game was at the Shoe. The game was in Columbus. And in 2016, guess what? That absolutely, without a doubt, mattered. Because I don't complain about officiating. I know people say that and then they end up doing it left and right. Nope, I don't do it. But I did it for that game. I'm going to tell you right now, if that game was played in Ann Arbor, I think we win that football game because the refs were absolutely on the side of Urban Meyer and the Ohio State Buckeyes and the crowd. There were terrible calls on key downs, 3rd downs that really cost Michigan the game on both sides of the ball. Pass interference calls that weren't pass interference on the defensive side of the ball and non-pass interference calls that were pass interference on the offensive side of the ball. It was pretty ridiculous. But this game's going to be in Ann Arbor, so you can't influence the refs the same way you did in the Shoe. I know I'm going to get a lot of crap from Ohio State fans in the comments below, and they're going to be reluctant. Remember, if you know this channel, remember that I think JT Barrett got the 1st down, so I'm not even arguing the 4th and 1 conversion. So there's just other calls that really mattered in that game, and I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal. Home field advantage in college football is monumental. Obviously, Michigan Stadium bowls outward, not as much noise there, but hey, if we go into that game with 1 loss or 0 losses, boy, do I feel pretty confident. I feel pretty confident going into that game with the home field advantage, and we'll be a lot more fiery. The fans will be more into it, Harbaugh and staff will be more into it, the players will be more into it. That home field advantage could be huge, and it is a difference compared to other even years where we've played Ohio State in this situation where we had a good team and they had a good team, and we lost because In part, we were at Columbus. Number 2, I know I talked earlier about our running game not being as huge of a factor in this game as you might think it would be, but I don't think that it doesn't matter. So number 2 for me is our running back talent this year, to me, is better than it has ever been in the Harbaugh era. Under Corum and Haskins, I think that's the best 1-2 punch Michigan has had in the Harbaugh era, and it is absolutely going to matter. And on top of that, the other part, 2A and 2B for me, is that these route runners for Michigan at the receiver positions, probably one of the best, if not the best, in the Harbaugh era. Let me explain. For the running back group, I said it wouldn't matter in this game as much as people think, but for key downs, 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 1s, 4th and 1, stuff like that, just extra yardage on 1st and 2nd down, you know, those 1 and 2 yards, they start to add up here and there. And Corum and Haskins, they do a very good job of spinning off tackles, plunging forward, keeping their feet turning, getting those extra yardage. I think this is the best, most talented 1-2 punch in the Harbaugh era, and I think that's going to matter in this game. The extra yardage from those two guys, I feel very confident about that. And it's going to matter in this game. In a brute up front, you know, their front 7 versus our front line, it's going to matter. We're not going to wear them down, but our running backs can wear them down with that extra yardage. And when I talk about the route running, man, you got Mike Sanristil, Cornelius Johnson, AJ Henning, Daylen Baldwin. Those guys are great route runners, okay? Again, talking about the ego thing, they're not the most talented of receivers, you know? They weren't sought after and all that all across the board, but they're very, very talented and they're excellent, quick, fast route runners. Nico Collins, for as good as he was really good. In fact, I think we should have thrown the ball to him downfield much more often than what we did, but that was a good play down that center of the field when we would throw the ball to him deep. That was a good play against, you know, smaller, less talented secondaries where he could actually get position, box out his man, and catch the ball. Against Ohio State, that's not as much of a factor. You know, I think those guys have enough moxie and enough talent back there on the back end at the safety position to match up with Nico Collins and jump with him in that situation. We can't just lob it up down the middle of the field like we could against some other teams. So I would argue, in a way, as good as Nico Collins was, maybe he kind of makes our offense, you know, a little bit more stagnant than what you would like. With all this quickness and all this speed, that is something that we need to exploit. And the great route running, man, the route running, because they're not as talented. And I would know this, you know, I had somebody on my team in high school that was a little bit more talented than I was at the receiver position, but I felt like I could hold my own against him. We're on the same team, so it's not against him, but if you were comparing us, I felt like I could hold my own against him because I was such a good blocker, for one, but a really good route runner, okay? I knew how to get open, and knowing how to get open and knowing how to beat your man off the ball is gigantic. It's going to be huge. You got to give Cade McNamara some confidence and some easy passes, and we have the guys this year who can do that. I feel very confident in that. Those two things, the running back group and the wide receiver group. And the number one reason why we are going to beat Ohio State this season, if you're being optimistic, the number one reason why we're going to beat Ohio State is the Mike Macdonald factor. You're not playing against Don Brown anymore, Ohio State, okay? We're not just going to give you this game, okay? We're not going to sit there in obvious blitz packages. You know, sometimes I would watch the Michigan defense and we'd be showing blitz and I'm like, surely we're not going to. We're making it way too obvious. I mean, I know Dr. Blitz likes to blitz. That's how he got his name. But surely we're not going to in this situation because they're making it so obvious that it's got to be the other way around. Nope. We would blitz. We would play one-on-one and let them just dink and dunk us all across and go deep on us and everything else. And, yeah, I was very critical of the Mike Macdonald hire when it first happened because I didn't like that he wasn't a defensive coordinator already and stuff like that. But like people say, man, you do got to get your chance somewhere. It's just usually not at a school like the University of Michigan. But Mike Macdonald, so far, I eat my words, man. When I'm right, I brag about it. When I'm wrong, I eat crow about it. And I think so far with Mike Macdonald, I am 100% in the wrong to have even questioned that hire right now. And I'll let you know if I ever change my mind. But right now, he is earning his keep, man. He is doing a lot of pre-snap switches whenever they know where the play's going. Doing a lot of that, a lot of movement, a lot of disguises that really confuse and make it hard for an opposing offense. And they're just running after the ball. They just have so much confidence. Mike Macdonald, I said it earlier, with the team as a whole, Mike Macdonald with the defense is doing so much more with so much less than what Don Brown had. If Mike Macdonald had some of Don Brown's defenses, goodness, how good have we been back then with Mike Macdonald as the DC as opposed to Don Brown. I love Don Brown's personality. The players loved playing for him, but he just wasn't that good schematically in X's and O's wise as a defensive coach. And that was my biggest knock. That's always been my biggest knock on Jim Harbaugh is, I mean, it's kind of stinks because it's to the fault of his loyalty, so that's a good thing to have, his loyalty, but he was just too loyal to Don Brown. Sometimes you do have to be cutthroat. He probably should have got rid of Don Brown much sooner than what he did, but forget that. That's in the past. So now looking forward, he got rid of Don Brown. He talked to his brother, said, hey, who's somebody off your staff that I can have that's really good? And his brother said, Mike Macdonald, okay? That's how I envision it went. So Mike Macdonald comes, he does all the things I talked about, and another thing he does really well, two things actually. Number one, another knock on Don Brown was he never had halftime adjustments. Mike Macdonald does have halftime adjustments. We've seen them plenty when things weren't going their way, particularly at the end of the Wisconsin game in the first half. And then I know Mertz got hurt or whatever, but we clearly made adjustments after that last drive that they had on that last possession. And he's even made in-game adjustments because whenever the halftime adjustments didn't work. So a good example of that is Nebraska gave up as many points as we did in the third quarter. Was it 29, I think? Gave up 29, I think, points in the third quarter. And then in the fourth, absolutely shut them down. He made the adjustments that he needed to make. That's another thing with Cade McNamara saying we wouldn't have won that game in the past. That's another reason why we wouldn't have won that game in the past, because Don Brown wouldn't have made the adjustments that he needed to make. And the other thing that I want to talk about is Mike Macdonald. He's just, his defense. It's just, like I said, doing more with less, okay? And to me, it is simplistic chaos. That's what I'd like to call it, simplistic chaos. It's easy for us as a defense to understand, but it's chaotic for an offense to understand. And that is one of the best ways you can be as a defense. Make it easy for your guys to communicate. Obviously, we had some communication issues against Nebraska, but outside of that, we haven't had those kind of issues. Make it easy for your guys to understand the defense and be comfortable with the defense, but hard for the offense to be able to move the ball against because they don't necessarily know what you're going to do next. Those are the 5 reasons why I think Michigan is going to beat Ohio State in this game. If I was thinking that Michigan was going to beat Ohio State in this game, right now, just being candid with you, I don't think we would win this game, but I think it will be very, very competitive, much like 2016. And so I'm not too far removed from saying we could win this game. We'll see. I got to see the coming weeks and see what happens as we play some harder teams. Both teams have to play Penn State and Michigan State before that, so we'll see how they perform against those teams, and then I'll kind of make that decision. And Ohio State fans, you're not going to be alone, and Michigan fans will get mad at me again, but in a few weeks, I'll probably do a video much to like this, how Ohio State can continue their dominance in this rivalry, something to that effect, and I'll do the opposite end of this, Ohio State, 5 reasons for that. But until then, this is what we got, 5 reasons why Michigan can beat Ohio State. This next weekend is going to be huge for this channel. I'll be calling the Michigan State game and the Penn State-Ohio State game because those are at 12 o'clock and 7:30 respectively, and I'll be doing a reaction video for both of those. So that Saturday will be a fun-filled Saturday. Hope to see you guys there in the streams. Until then, have a great one. God bless, and go blue.